All right, well, I have the incredible privilege of getting to introduce a legend. Y'all better be ready. Better be ready. I'm actually going to read your bio. Do you not want me to? Okay, I'm going to read her bio, and then I'm going to tell you who she really is, okay? Because some of you might be new to Harmony. Survivor of exploitation turned UCLA honor student. Harmony's goal is to help women and girls entrenched in sexual exploitation find freedom. Armed with personal experience, evidence-based theories, and a master's degree in social work, thank you, she comprehensively sheds light on the impact of a pornified culture and the lives of those trapped within it. Her pursuit of justice has led to congressional recognition and opportunities to train the Department of Justice and FBI in best practices. In 2003, she founded the amazing organization Treasures that we support here as one of our justice organizations to support other women in their recovery from the commercial sex industry and trafficking. Harmony's memoir, which I highly recommend you get, Scars and Stilettos, details her harrowing account of moving from victim to survivor to liberator. Come on. Guys, Harmony and her family, they're a part of this community. Her husband, Chris, and their incredible kids, they're a part of this church, this community. But I want to just tell you firsthand what a gift it is to have this incredible woman speak to us today and on this topic. Harmony, through and through, is the real deal. Harmony, there are few people that love Jesus the way you do. And listen, for some, the cost of following Jesus maybe isn't so high. And for others, especially when you are pioneering and you're going into really dark territory and bringing back what the enemy has stolen and you're establishing new things, sometimes the cost is really high. And Harmony's paid a high price. And I have watched this woman love Jesus and love people unlike very few can do. And she is such a gift. She is such an incredible treasure, an incredible communicator, and I am so grateful that we get to sit at her feet and learn just some of the incredible things that she has truly forged in the fire for us. So you guys, give it up for the amazing Harmony Grillo, who's going to come and share this morning.
Thank you, guys. Good to be here. I got to say hi to my family watching online, specifically. Hi, Luca. My 3-year-old, whenever he sees me live, he's like, hi, mommy. She's not talking to me. So, hi, Luca. They're watching as long as my husband could pull himself away from all the Brady Belichick drama and coverage today. Is anyone else very excited for the game? Yes. We're Brady all day. We followed Brady. Oh, haters. It's so good to be here. We're gathering again. We're doing it. Is anyone else feeling very awkward about it? No, just me? I feel like I need to be re-socialized. And I'm like, I like you, but don't hug me. And people go to shake my hand. I'm like, I give them an elbow. Just me? No, you, okay. The people online, they understand what I'm talking about. You guys, I own surgical masks and surgical gloves and all of the hand sanitizer before the pandemic, okay? Y'all are in my playbook now. This is how I live. We would quarantine our own children when they got sick before COVID. So anyways, that's what we're dealing with. I'm cool with it. But yeah, the pandemic has been especially hard, I would say, on extroverts in terms of the quarantine, wouldn't you say? As an introvert, it was like, I know there's been a lot of pain surrounding the pandemic and the virus itself, but the quarantine, I'm like, do you know that one of an introvert's favorite things is a canceled plan? Because we're like, I just got some more free time. I'm going to go stare at a wall. I'm going to go reorganize my closet. I was, what is it, the home edit? I edited my whole home, okay? Very happy about it. We had to make all these decisions, like who's in your pod, who's in your bubble, are they in, are they out? You invited them in, then you realize they're annoying. You try to get them out of your pod. It was a whole thing. But for real though, it's whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, it's been hard on us, right? And that's because we are designed for community. We're designed for community. So even introverts, I would say, probably got to the point where we're like, can we just have a party? And you know that's when we're in trouble. All right, so I want to read from Acts 2, the early community of believers in Acts. It says this: all the believers devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship and to sharing in meals, including the Lord's Supper, and to prayer. A deep sense of awe came over them all, and the apostles performed many miraculous signs and wonders. And all the believers met together in one place and shared everything they had. They sold their property and possessions and shared the money with those in need. They worshiped together at the temple each day. They met in homes for the Lord's Supper and shared their meals with great joy and generosity, all the while praising God and enjoying the goodwill of all the people. And this is the kind of community that God really is inviting us into, this kind of, sharing together, sharing what you have, all of us coming together. And there are a number of ways that are like kind of relating styles, right? This is a picture of what's called interdependence. And interdependence says, I am an autonomous person with my own unique strengths and abilities, and I can do things on my own, but I'm choosing to engage in community because I recognize that we're better together. When we all come together in our own autonomy and uniqueness, we're better together. This is also kind of what a collectivist society looks like. And that basically is just a term that describes how we relate in a group setting, right? So collectivist cultures, they value selflessness, what's best for society. They have a high priority on working together as a group, on family. This kind of collectivist mindset is something we see a lot in the Middle East, in South America, in a lot of Asian cultures. Collectivism, it's interdependence. On the other, and it's high responsibility. You have a high sense of responsibility, not for people, but to people, but also a high sense of freedom, right? Because you are an autonomous person. On the other hand, you have independence. This is another relating style. And independence basically says, I will do it by myself. There's a high sense of freedom, but a low sense of responsibility to others, right? Because people who operate in independence might believe falsely, like, I don't need other people. And sometimes this comes from woundedness, right? Like, I can't trust other people, so I'm just going to do it myself. If you want something done right, do it yourself, right? Independent thinking. And individualist cultures highly value independence. The United States is considered one of the most individualist cultures in the world. There's a high priority on autonomy, individuality, self-sufficiency, right? That's kind of how the U.S. operates. Another relating style is dependence. Dependence, basically the motto is, I can't do it by myself. I need other people, and I can't do it on my own. There's a low sense of freedom, but there's also a low sense of responsibility. And then the final relating style, and this is the one that we're going to spend the most time on today, is codependence. I have to help you before I can help myself. Codependence. I did want to say, actually, I want to back up real quick and talk about a place in America where you do see more interdependence and more collectivism is in communities where there's a lot of poverty. Because part of the poverty support system is that when you have money, you spend it and share it, because you know that at some point someone else is going to have the money and you're going to need them to share it with you. So there's a little bit more of a collectivist mindset, tends to be, in communities that deal with poverty. So I did want to say that. Okay. So before we get into the message and talking about codependency and boundaries, let's just take a moment and pray. Sound good? Okay. Oh, God, thank you. Thank you, Jesus, for your desire for intimacy with us. As that worship song we were singing earlier, to be face to face with us, God, for us to be in relationship with you, being seen and known and fully loved. And I thank you, God, that's also your desire for us in community, to be seen and known and fully loved. I pray, God, that today you would open eyes and bring revelation that would lead to just the breaking of unhealthy patterns of relationship. I pray even generationally cycles of and ways of relating that are unhealthy would be broken today in the name of Jesus, and that you would draw us closer to a healthier relating style, not only with other people, but with you, God. I thank you, Lord, that you have created us paradoxically not only to be dependent on you, but also to have free will and to be free-thinking, autonomous individuals all at once. Pray that you would show us what that looks like, God. Show us how that translates to our relationship with you and with others. We love you. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so the term codependency, it's not just recovery jargon. It was, initially came out of when you think of it, you probably think of like AA or 12-step, right? But it's not just describing relationships between people and those struggling with addiction. It really is a relating style that is so subtle and sneaky and can infiltrate so many relationships and communities. And part of the reason is because we are designed for community, we are designed for relationship, we are designed for intimacy. And here's what codependency does for us. It gives us a sense of connection to other people without having to risk true vulnerability and relational pain. Because codependency says, I have to help you before I can help me. It's about meeting other people's needs. And in meeting people's needs, we can have a false sense of intimacy, but never ourselves have to be seen and known and vulnerable. So it's a sneaky thing. And I have to tell you, the reason I'm so passionate about talking about this is because truly, 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 codependency almost wrecked my life. Like, legit. It took my previous marriage completely falling apart for me to recognize that codependency was something that had a huge grip on me. My mother, she's no longer with us, but she struggled with addiction. So I learned my earliest style, like my relating patterns, the way I related to other people, were established primarily in my relationship with my mother. And I learned very early on to be codependent. I learned that I was responsible for the wants, needs, and feelings of other people. And because of that, that is the way I connected to the whole world. That I definitely tended to draw people who struggled with addictions, but I also related that way to everyone. As we talked about earlier, I run an organization called Treasures. We help women find recovery and freedom from exploitation and trafficking. There's a lot of opportunity to be codependent in the helping field. There's a lot of opportunity to put that superhero cape on and constantly arrive for everyone else's needs and never take responsibility for your own wants, needs, and feelings. And I certainly was in that pattern with my leadership, with how I ran my organization. I was in that pattern with every friend that I had. I was in that pattern, unfortunately, with my ex-husband. And I remember one night, I was sitting there and I had my 10-month-old daughter in my arms. And I was just fervently praying for breakthrough, for chains of addiction to be broken in his life. I was praying for restoration in the marriage. I was praying that he would come back, that he would fight for the marriage. I was praying that he would fight for himself, for his recovery. And I was singing that song. You guys remember, chains be broken, lives be healed, eyes be open, Christ is revealed. And I was singing it, and I was singing it, and I was singing over him as I was holding my baby girl, and I just felt like God was like, I need to break your chains. I need to open your eyes. And I began this process of recognizing that I was actually just as sick in my codependency as he was in addiction. That my addiction was trying to fix and control and change his addiction. My addiction was trying to fix and control and change the people's problems, everyone's problems in my life. And it had its grip on me, and it was running me to the ground. And I have to tell you, I would not be here today. I would not be 18 years into leading an organization healthfully if I hadn't gotten some recovery for codependency. When it comes to defining it, it's difficult. I started off for years. I went to Celebrate Recovery. That's where I began my recovery from codependency. I drove every Friday night in traffic, LA traffic, to Orange County every Friday night for 2 years with a baby in the back seat because I was hungry for recovery. And I've been learning about codependency and growing and finding freedom from it for, 12 and a half years now. And I still don't know the actual definition because no one has really agreed on one, right? And so in one of the definitions that I came across that I actually liked was from Danny Silk. Some of you guys know him. He says, codependency is driven by the agreement that I work harder on your problems and your life than you do. Isn't that good? I would like to add to that, it's driven by the agreement that I will neglect my own wants, needs, and feelings in order to cater to yours. That really is one of the kind of cruxes of codependency. And I would say that Christians are especially susceptible to codependency, right? Because it's really fostered and even celebrated in the church. Oh my gosh, God bless her. She's amazing. She serves in 17 ministries. She's at church 7 days a week. Isn't she awesome? She's dying. She has no time for a personal relationship with God because she's so busy serving, right? And that line between codependency and people-pleasing and actually serving gets blurred, right? And it's difficult to distinguish it. And people are encouraged in many church communities and church kind of settings to pour themselves out and pour themselves out and pour themselves out and neglect themselves in the process. And it also gets confusing because it's like, yeah, we're supposed to help each other when we're, that's the Christian way, right? Bear each other's burdens. And it does get a little confusing. I love the clarity that Dr. Clouden Townsend, two of my favorite authors, bring to this whole thing. They break it down for us. So basically, Galatians 6 says this: carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. If anyone thinks they are something when they are not, they deceive themselves. Each one should test their own actions. They can take pride in themselves alone without comparing themselves to someone else, for each one should carry their own load. It sounds like a contradiction. The passage starts out and it says, carry each other's burdens. But then it ends by saying, but each of us are to carry our own load. It's like, okay, well, wait, what am I supposed to carry? But Cloud and Townsend break it down in their book Boundaries, and they say a burden, the word for burden, that Greek word for burden, means excess weight. A burden is something that it's too heavy to carry on your own. It's something that could crush you, right? The word load, the Greek word, is knapsack, and it represents your daily responsibilities. So the things you need to take care of in your own life on a daily basis. So yes, we're supposed to help each other with each other's burdens, those things that are too heavy and too difficult to bear. But each one of us needs to remain responsible for our own knapsack, for our own, what is ours to own. What is ours to own is our wants, needs, feelings, actions, choices, perspectives, behaviors, right? That's on me. And what happens is we get confused and we try to take responsibility for other people's knapsacks, and in the process are actually disempowering them and enabling often bad behavior. Thank you, just turning my pages here. Okay, so we're gonna go through 4 signs of codependency. The first one we've kind of briefly touched on, but it's constantly putting the wants, needs, and feelings of other people above your own. Of course, there are times in our life where we have to sacrifice and prioritize other people. Like I can't just be to my children like, I'm sorry, I'm not taking care of your wants, needs, and feelings because I got to go to the spa today. They are dependent on me. Like I obviously have to take care of them. When it comes to aging parents, right? People maybe struggling with illnesses that are loved ones. Yes, there are times we have to sacrifice, and we might have to, set aside some of our own wants, needs, and feelings to arrive for other people. But if putting aside your wants, needs, and feelings for the sake of other people becomes a primary way of relating, that's when it's codependent. So, and the other thing about it is a lot of times we think we're helping people when actually, especially when it comes to people who are stuck in harmful habits and behaviors and relationships, our codependency is actually enabling them. We're actually continuing to perpetuate the negative patterns in their life by enabling them when we think we're helping them. The second sign of codependency is having difficulty saying no. I have to say, like, I am a recovering people pleaser to the max. I no was barely in my vocabulary. And this was established early on, like I said, in my childhood, with a mother as an addict and learning this way of relating to people. And then, as Jen mentioned, I've overcome exploitation. And in exploitation in the commercial sex industry, you don't get to have a no. You're actually paid pretty much to give up your right to say no, and your whole job is to say yes and cater to the wants, needs, and demands of other people. And so I didn't know how to say no. It's been a huge process for me to do, as Cloud and Townsend say, to exercise my no muscle. So having difficulty saying no. And, you know, one of the things with codependency is a lot of times we do things for other people, but then we find ourselves feeling resentment because we feel obligated. So even our yes isn't a true yes if we don't have the right to say no, right? Because if you're doing something out of obligation and compulsion and you don't recognize that you are actually empowered to say no, then your yes doesn't mean as much, and you end up feeling resentful and frustrated about your yes. So, and the truth is we get to choose. So now when I'm asking myself, am I going to say yes to something, some of the questions I ask myself are, is it healthy? Will I regret it? Is it realistic? Will saying yes enable bad behavior? And then I can make a decision from there. The third thing is spending a lot of time focusing and thinking about worrying about other people's problems and circumstances. And that's, again, one of the tricks of codependency is that I get to be so focused on your problems and your circumstances that I actually never have to deal with my own junk, right? And especially if, as codependents, we're surrounding ourselves with people who may be caught up in some addictions or unhealthy patterns, there's such a temptation to fall into pride and thinking, I'm really coming up pretty golden here. I'm looking pretty good compared to the addicts in my life. So what issues do I have to deal with? I'm good, right? I remember, unfortunately, my first reaction to some of the things my ex-husband was struggling with was, that's your problem. I haven't done anything wrong, right? Like, I'm coming up golden in this relationship. I have no part in this. And no, I am not responsible for any of his choices or actions or addictions, but I did have to look at, interesting, what drew me to him? Interesting, how have I perpetuated this? Where were my boundaries lacking along the way, which we're going to talk about later? The thing with codependency also is that when we're faced with other people's problems or challenges, it confronts us with our own powerlessness. And in that sense of powerlessness is uncomfortable. So we want to try to take back control by trying to fix and change other people to give us a false sense of control, but this is not our job. The fourth sign of codependency, you guys still with me? Okay. Having one-sided relationships. This was another one that I totally struggled with. Like, all of my relationships were like, you know, if you're constantly on the giving end of all of your relationships, that's definitely something to evaluate. And I remember in about, you know, maybe it was like 2010 or 9 or 10, God really started to challenge me to be intentional about seeking out and fostering reciprocal relationships. And it was hard because what I recognized is that there was a lot of insecurity that came up. And one of the interesting things I found myself thinking, just those mental tapes that kind of play in your head is like, why do they want to be friends with me? They don't need me. And if you don't need me, why would you love me, right? Because that's one of the lies that we as codependents believe, is that our value is in how much somebody needs us. And if I can't do anything for you, then do I still have value? Why would you still love me? And what's interesting, too, when you think of all these different relating patterns, in fact, they do impact our relationship with God. And it was wild because one day I realized that this is wild, but I opened up just about all of my sessions of prayer with, God, what do you need from me? For real? Like, okay, and of course there are times like, God, what are you calling me to? What are you asking of me? But my primary relating style with God was codependent. I thought that my value was in what I could do for him and how I could serve him. And then if I'm not doing and I'm not serving and I'm not, then why would he love me? So if you constantly find yourself on the giving end of relationships, that's definitely something to evaluate. It could be a sign of codependency. Okay, so one of my favorite excerpts of writing that exists in all creation, I'm going to read it to you because it directly deals with this. It's Shauna Nyquist. It's out of her book, Present Over Perfect. Has anyone read it? Oh, Lord, it is so good. Okay, listen to what she says. You don't have to sacrifice your spirit, your joy, your soul, your family, your marriage on the altar of ministry. Just because you have the capacity to do something doesn't mean you have to do it. You must ask not only what fruit it brings to the world, but what fruit it yields on the inside of your life and heart. It has been tremendously helpful to think of myself as a part of the kingdom, a part of the church. I am not building the kingdom if that work is destroying this member of that kingdom. If you burn down your garden in order to make more room to host and feed your friends, you would find yourself short-sighted the next time you wanted to feed the people you love, right? I set myself aflame as often as necessary, whatever it took to keep going, to build, to help, but I'm learning slowly that wholeness prevails. I know that I am responsible for stewarding my own life, my desires and my limitations, my capacities and longings. I can do far less than I originally believed. And I am reveling in the smallness of my capacity. This is it. This is who I am. This is all I have to give you. It's not a fire hose, unending gallons of water knocking you over the force. It's a stream, tiny, clear, cool. That's what I have to give. And that small stream is mine to nurture, to tend, to offer first to the people I love most, my first honor and responsibility. Isn't that phenomenal? I have to say, this passage, and I broke it up a little bit, but constantly in my head, I'm like, I am reveling in the smallness of my capacity. The more I actually operate and live in health, just the more I realize, gosh, I am just a human. I'm just a human. And this is all I have to give, and it's finite. It's finite. I don't have everything to give. I am a human with a finite capacity, and I have to learn to steward and determine what is healthy for me to give out of that finite capacity and how I can replenish and nurture and steward my own capacity to give. So how do we protect, steward, and nurture that small, finite stream that we have to give from? Healthy boundaries. And we're going to spend the rest of the time talking about it. And so some of you guys might be like, I don't deal with codependency, and maybe you haven't connected as much to the first part of this message. Maybe you have a friend who deals with codependency. But this second part, healthy boundaries, is for all of us. Because healthy boundaries are healthy for all of us, not just those of us that have struggled with codependency. All right, so healthy boundaries. Boundaries define who we are not, what we will do, what we will not do, what we will tolerate, what we will not tolerate. Some examples of healthy boundaries, just in case it's helpful. There's all kinds of categories, but we're going to go through a few. Physical. I don't hug people I barely know. That's a boundary that you could set for yourself. I'm comfortable with PDA, or I'm not comfortable with PDA. My husband is comfortable with a lot more PDA than I am, so we have to meet in the middle. I need times when I have my own personal space away from people. I need a lot of those times. I will not tolerate being hit, pushed, grabbed. I will not be shaking hands during COVID, okay? That is one of my personal boundaries. Actually, I did a high five earlier, but I pulled out the sanitizer. And then I gave him sanitizer too. So we're good. Alex. Emotional boundaries. I want to share without receiving advice, AKA, I don't need you to fix me. I will not take responsibility for your feelings. Your feelings don't dictate my feelings. This is one of the biggest problems with codependency is I'm okay as long as you're okay. Are you okay? Because if you're not okay, then I can't be okay. Are you okay? You're not okay? Oh my gosh, then I'm not okay. How can I fix you and make you okay so that I can be okay? Because I can't be okay until you're okay. Like, that is codependency. And that is like, that's what my brain wants to do. And I have to be like, no, I'm okay and I can be okay even if you're not okay. And the closer and more intimate the relationship, the harder it is. With my children, I'm like, if they have big feelings, my codependency like spikes up in me, and I'm like, how can I fix it? But I'm working on it. Okay. In other words, when you are sad, I am allowed to not be sad. Have you ever noticed that in some relationships? That's like their emotional tone sets the room, and you feel the need to cater and rise and fall to their emotional tone. That's a codependent relating pattern. I can be okay even if you're not okay. You can be sad and I can arrive for you in your sadness, but I don't have to also be sad, right? I will not tolerate name-calling, belittling. Sexual boundaries. I will speak up, leave, get help when there is unwanted sexual touch or comments. As a survivor of lots of abuse and exploitation, I recognize that there are times when obviously your boundary has been victimized and crossed by someone that was outside of your power. So this boundary statement is not at all to shame anyone who has found their boundaries violated. But as a survivor of exploitation and abuse, I can also say it has been incredibly empowering to me to learn to have boundaries with people around me in this area. I'm comfortable with the following types of physical sexual intimacy in this relationship. I am uncomfortable with the following types of physical sexual intimacy. So when my husband and I first started dating, we talked about it. What are you comfortable with? He was very surprised that my choice was to wait till marriage to French kiss. That was a big surprise to him, but that was a physical boundary that I had, and ultimately it was to protect us, okay? To protect us from each other. And then he was like, that was a smart boundary. Because we made it, y'all. We made it to the wedding day. Before I'm intimate, I need the following. What do you need before you can be intimate with someone? Signs that someone doesn't respect your boundaries. Because you know what? If someone loves you, if they really love you, they will love your boundaries. I love it when someone tells me their boundary. Then I don't have to worry, wonder, guess. It's like, yes, thank you for telling me. So signs someone doesn't respect your boundaries: if you start doubting your boundary, you sense something's off, you make excuses for their behavior, you let them convince you that your boundary shouldn't be there in the first place, or you feel guilty about your boundary. Some signs that they don't respect your boundary is they give you a guilt trip, they disregard your decisions and your boundaries, they try to manipulate you, they punish you for your boundary, they pressure you, they ignore your boundary. And I do have to say, especially if we have relationships with people in our lives and they're used to us not having boundaries, you're gonna have some backlash when you set them, okay? Like, for real, when I started setting boundaries in my life, the people in my life that I had participated in establishing those relationship patterns, they were used to me dropping everything to show up for me, for them. They were used to me catering to their wants, needs, and feelings. They were used to all of that. And when I started to behave differently, they didn't like it. So you can expect people to get upset. You can expect people to get mad at your boundary, be uncomfortable with it. They might even have a little tantrum about it. And that's okay. You still get to have your boundary. And they will live and you will live. It's okay. All right, how to set a boundary. This is one of my favorite ones. No is a complete sentence. No is a complete sentence. I would encourage you to avoid codependent explanations. What's a codependent explanation? I'm glad you asked. Here it is. Okay. I want to help you move, but I haven't had a day off in like 3 weeks, and I'm like really tired, and I was hoping I was going to be able to hike that day. So I don't know, it's going to be really hard for me. Plus my back's kind of been hurting, and if I throw my back out, then I won't be able to pick up my toddler. So I mean, right? Like, that's a codependent explanation. What you're looking for is permission to say no. What you're looking for is the other person to approve of your boundary and not be mad at you for having one. And I'm not saying you can't tell your friend what's going on in your life, right? You can be like, oh my gosh, you know what? Tomorrow's my only day off, right? And plus my back's been hurting. But if the goal of your explanation is to try to fix or manage their emotional response to your boundary, it's codependent. So I'm going to show you how I text message. I'm so sorry I can't make it. I really feel bad about it. Delete, delete, delete. Oh, what a bummer. I won't be able to make it. Like, I just delete the whole codependent explanation. No is a complete sentence. The second thing to managing boundaries is to be in touch with what you want, need, and feel. Because that's where it all starts, right? The codependent pattern is very much what do they want, need, and feel. So the way to break it is to stop and pause and say, okay, they want, need, and feel this, but I want, need, and feel this. Then you can make an informed decision. I'm not saying you have to say no to everything. You can still say yes, but you can say yes empowered by the opportunity and option of saying no. You can say yes connected to your wants, needs, and feelings. Like there might be times I would say like, hey, you know what? I'm so sorry I can't help you move, right? Can I maybe stop by and bring you coffee on my way to my hike, right? Or there might be, and some people who are real strong with their boundaries might say, you don't even have to say I'm so sorry. So maybe that's some codependency coming out of me. They're like, I can't come, okay? My friend Ashley Abercrombie will just be like, no, I can't come. I'm like, I'm so sorry, I can't come. Okay, where were we? Oh boy, here we go. Okay, so yeah, my own wants, needs, and feelings. Or I might say, they need help moving. I really don't want to help them. And I'm connected to that feeling I have. But I'm going to, connected to my own feeling, make a choice that I'm still going to help them because they're such a good friend and I want to arrive for them. And I'm willing in this instance to put aside my own kind of, I don't feel like doing it, and just suck it up and do it, right? But the point is that you're connected to yourself in that process so that the great thing about it is your yes is yes and your no is no, right? Today my yes is a very empowered yes. So don't be afraid to pause and take a minute and evaluate what do I want, need, and feel, and then make a decision, especially if you've struggled with consistently putting the wants, needs, and feelings of others above your own. So the next thing, evaluate the relationship. Is it a reciprocal relationship? Is it life-giving? Is it safe? Are the expectations healthy? So you're not only going to want to look at, like, what do I want, need, and feel, and how do I want to respond, but what kind of relationship is this? Because there are some relationships with some people where they're not even safe enough to have a conversation about your boundaries. It's just time to walk away. It's just time to hang up the phone. It's just time to create that space. You don't need to even explain to them, because if they're not a safe person, they're not going to respect your boundary in the first place, and no amount of sitting down and communicating it is going to get them to be like, oh, thank you for telling me no. I get it now. And you know what? That's right. You should take care of yourself. Gosh, what have I been thinking all these years, right? With people who are unsafe, they're not going to do that. So you're just going to have to set the boundary and maybe not even have a conversation about it, right? So evaluate, what is this relationship? Can I have a conversation about this boundary? Does my boundary need to be very rigid and strong and firm? Can it be flexible? Can I deliver it gently or kindly, or do I just need to be like, no, okay? So evaluate the relationship. The next thing, this is important, decide the consequences. My sponsor always said to me, a boundary is not a boundary if it doesn't have consequences. If you just keep saying, stop doing that, stop doing that. If I tell my toddler, stop doing that, stop doing that, stop doing that, stop doing that, that's not a boundary. Now I'm just nagging. If I'm like, hey, if you touch that one more time, you're going on a thinking time. Okay, there's the consequence. So decide, what will the consequences be if this person continues to cross and disrespect your boundaries? And then the final thing is to speak up if it's safe. If you've evaluated the relationship and determined that it's safe to speak up and follow through. Stay consistent. This is the hardest thing, because sometimes we start feeling guilty. Should I have done that? Should I have ended that relationship? They're mad at you. They're tantruming, right? And it's like, oh, I'm feeling bad. They're upset. I don't like that they're upset. I'm not used to being okay when they're upset, but following through on that boundary that you decide is healthy for your heart and healthy for your life is so important. So some boundary statements, just in case you need help with language. I used to sit on the phone with my sponsor for hours and be like, how do I say this? I don't know how to say this. Okay, so here's some examples. I'd love to be able to do that for you, but unfortunately, in light of my schedule, I won't be able to. This is one of my favorite ones. Okay, you ready? Today is my day off. Let's talk about that work-related thing on Monday when I'm back. That's like, take back your weekends or your days off, whatever your days off, take them back, okay? Another one, I'm not okay with comments like that. I need you to stop making them in front of me. I'm feeling disrespected right now. If you do not stop speaking to me that way, I will need to leave the room or hang up the phone or, so you get it. Okay, so if you have struggled with boundaries, with codependency in your life, what I want to encourage you in is that your wants, needs, and feelings, they matter. They matter. They matter to God as well. They matter to God as well. And He does not call us to set ourselves on fire to keep other people warm. We do not have to sacrifice ourselves on the altar of ministry. As we said earlier, you yourself are a part of the kingdom that you're seeking to build. You yourself are a part of that kingdom. We were created for reciprocal relationship. We were created to be seen, to be known. We were created for the kind of relationship where you can say and state your wants, needs, and feelings, and they can be heard by the other person who can then also say and state their wants, needs, and feelings. And both can exist at the same time. That's reciprocal relationship. Both can exist at the same time. God desires healthy reciprocal relationship for us. He desires that kind of interconnected community experience. And I have to tell you, it is one of the most life-changing, life-altering, healing, beautiful things I have ever experienced. And yes, it can be scary. Yes, it's difficult to risk being seen and known, especially when you're comfortable with those walls and those masks. But it is so worth it. It is so worth it. And that's what God desires for us. So before I leave, I have a couple quick resources for you. If you like quizzes, I love quizzes. I have a 3-minute quiz. Do you struggle with codependency? Maybe you're not sure, maybe you're not convinced, or maybe you just like taking quizzes. You can take it, and then I'll send you some additional resources to help you as you're navigating codependency, or your friend, right? Another resource that we have, my memoir that popped up earlier. You can grab that. It's just my story of overcoming abuse and exploitation and finding freedom. And then the final resource is someone I love, a guide to helping those stuck in harmful behaviors and relationships. I created this short little guide because this is really what I do with my life. It's like, so when we do have relationships with people who are stuck in harmful patterns and harmful behaviors and relationships, how do we actually help them in a way that's not codependent? How do we empower them to move towards health and change in their life that's healthy for us and empowering to them and not codependent? So it's a tiny little guide. It's like, I don't even know how many pages. It's very short, easy to read, but I created that as a resource, so hopefully it's helpful to you. All right, thank you guys for having me.